The embrace that split the tennis world, everyone knew the moment was coming. Roger Federer, winner of 20 Grand Slam titles and the most cherished figure the sport has ever produced, set foot on the grounds of the Miami Open for the first time since hanging up his racket. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Fans surged forward, cameras swung in his direction, and for one brief, luminous stretch of time, the entire tennis world stopped what it was doing to acknowledge the man who had defined it for 2 decades. Then something unexpected happened, something that no one had scripted or anticipated. Federer had been making his way through the grounds, shaking hands, posing for photos, and absorbing the adoration that followed him like a second shadow. Then his eyes landed on a familiar face near the practice courts. A slight young woman in a Nike warm-up jacket, 20 years old, Filipino, signing autographs for a cluster of fans with a smile that lit up the surrounding space. She was easy to overlook if you didn't know who she was. Federer knew exactly who she was. Alex Eala looked up from her autograph session and stopped cold. The 20-time Grand Slam champion, the man she had watched on television as a girl, the player she had once described as such an icon in this sport, was walking straight toward her. What followed lasted only seconds, but felt much longer. Federer pulled her into a genuine embrace, his smile wide, his eyes bright. Ella looked as though she might dissolve entirely. When they stepped back from each other, he said something that made her laugh. She later shared it with reporters. He said my forehand looked better than his, she told them, grinning. I told him I had a lot of work to do before I could even dream of that. It was a moment of warmth and recognition, Federer seeing in the young Filipina the same qualities he had always valued most in the sport. Grace. The ability to carry a crowd. Something larger than rankings or titles. But while every camera in the vicinity was trained on that exchange, something else was unfolding just steps away. Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning world number 1 and defending Miami Open champion, had been waiting to greet Federer herself. She had grown up studying his game, idolizing the elegance with which he moved and competed. This was supposed to be her moment too. Instead, Federer walked past her without a glance, pulled into the spontaneous orbit of a player who had never won a Grand Slam title. Sabalenka's smile faded. Her arms crossed. When she finally turned and walked away, the body language said everything her silence would not. The image spread within hours. Federer and Ella in an embrace, Sabalenka standing in the background, expression closed off and shoulders squared. The tennis world fractured along predictable lines. To understand why Federer's recognition of Ella carried such weight, you need to understand his history with the place where she spent 7 years of her life. The Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca has always meant something to Federer beyond the obvious rivalry. He was present for the Academy's grand opening in October 2016, standing alongside his greatest opponent to mark a new chapter. Rafa, you've been the one that influenced and inspired me the most, Federer said that day. I had to reinvent many things in my game thanks to you. I'm super happy to be here. I know I'll send my kids if they want to learn how to play tennis. He returned in January 2024, spending time with the young players developing there, Ella among them. He came back again in July 2025, reuniting with Nadal in a visit that sent a wave of nostalgia through the sport. The Academy regards Ella as one of its signature success stories, alongside Casper Ruud and Martin Landelis. She was shaped by Tony Nadal, the uncle whose coaching hand built one of the greatest careers in tennis history. Federer has followed her progression closely. He understands what she represents, not just a promising player, but the first tennis star for 115 million Filipinos who never had one before. His embrace was not a casual gesture. It was a statement. Federer has made no secret of what draws him to players in retirement. He visits tournaments not for nostalgia alone, but to study the game's trajectory, to understand who will carry it forward, to connect with the generation inheriting what his era built. In Ella, he apparently saw something worth stopping for. Those close to Federer offered the straightforward explanation for the Sabalenka situation. He simply hadn't seen her. The crowd was dense. The moment with Ella was spontaneous. In the court of public opinion, that explanation landed with varying degrees of credibility. Sabalenka said nothing publicly about it. She answered questions about her matches, smiled for cameras, and continued marching through the draw as the defending champion and top seed. When a reporter raised the incident at her post-match press conference, she offered a thin smile and said, "I'm focused on my tennis. That's what matters." For anyone who knows Sabalenka, a player who fired back immediately when a Dubai tournament director accused her of feigning injury, who publicly expressed disbelief when organizers considered bumping her match for Carlos Alcaraz in Sharjah, the composure was striking. The jaw was tight. The silence was deliberate. She has 2 Grand Slam titles. She is the world #1. She had just defended the Miami Open the previous year and was chasing the Sunshine Double after finally claiming Indian Wells. She had earned her standing in this sport through relentless competition and iron will. And in the span of a few seconds, she had been rendered invisible. Social media lit up with competing interpretations. Sabalenka is world #1, defending champion, 2-time Grand Slam winner. One fan wrote beneath the viral video, "She's done everything and she gets ignored for someone who's never been past the 4th round of a major. She has every right to be furious." Another voice pushed back. "It's not about ranking. It's about what Eala represents. She's carrying a nation. She's inspiring millions who never cared about tennis." Federer recognizes that because he did the same thing. Both were right in their own way, and that was precisely what made the moment so difficult to untangle. For Eala herself, the encounter existed outside of all that noise. She had grown up watching Federer and Nadal wage war across the great surfaces of the world, admiring both, but particularly drawn to the Swiss player's elegance. In 2022, shortly after his retirement announcement, she had spoken about him publicly. "The thing I admire the most about Roger is his grace on court, and off the court as well," she said. "His composure, and just how he carries himself and the image he's built up over the years." 3 years later, she was receiving that grace in person. When reporters pressed her on the drama surrounding the moment, on Sabalenka's reaction, on the controversy churning across social media, she deflected without a flicker of defensiveness. "I didn't see what happened. I was just focused on the moment with Roger. He was so kind, so generous. I hope everyone can just appreciate what a special moment that was." She understood, even at 20, that the embrace carried significance beyond sentiment. Federer's public recognition of a player who had already outsold everyone in the Miami Open field combined, who had crashed ticketing systems and sold 57% of all tournament merchandise, was an endorsement that transcended anything a ranking point could provide. It told a watching world that the most respected figure in tennis history saw something in her worth acknowledging. That is not a small thing. And yet the friction it produced was real. Sabalenka and Eala have never faced each other across a net. They have never exchanged a crossword. No genuine animosity existed between them before that afternoon. But sport runs on narrative, and the image of a champion standing arms crossed in the background while someone else receives the legend's embrace was a narrative too powerful to release. Federer had arrived at the Miami Open expecting to celebrate the sport he loves. What he inadvertently created was a fault line. His warmth toward Eala was real. His failure to acknowledge Sabalenka was, by all accounts, accidental. But in the world of professional tennis, where everything means something and perception becomes reality within minutes, accidents carry consequences. Sabalenka returned to her preparation, jaw set, focus sharpened. Her coaches knew her well enough to recognize the signs. She does not dwell. She competes. And when something stings, she channels it into the only place it belongs, the court. Eala walked away from that moment carrying something she would never forget. Recognition from the man who had made her fall in love with the sport in the first place. A confirmation that the path she was on, however winding, was visible to the people who mattered most. Somewhere beneath Hard Rock Stadium, as both women disappeared into their separate tunnels, a rivalry had quietly taken its first breath, born not on the court, but in the space between an embrace and a cold silence. No one saw it coming, but no one who witnessed that moment would forget it either.